All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Today, with your host, Richard Fu from richardfu.com and The Ultimate Man. And today, I have an absolute pleasure and an absolute honor to have this superstar on, right? I got to see Ben Harvey from Authentic Education, the founder of, the co-founders of Authentic Education, on stage at one of his amazing events, the Turning Point Intensive. If you're in Australia and you haven't been to this event, I highly recommend you must go to this amazing free 3-day event because it changes your life, right? It helps you pivot from the turning point to where you're at now to where you want to be. And I highly recommend it with what Ben has done with Authentic Education, with Cham. You know, they've created a company that's been rated not once, but twice in BRW's Fast Starters Award. And they just continue growing and growing. And if anything, they're one of the fastest growing education companies in Australia. But not only that, Ben is the difference maker mentor. He helps make a huge difference in your life. And it's an absolute pleasure of mine to have my mate, Ben, on the show. Ben, good to have you on.
Thanks, man. What an intro. Jeez, I better live up to it.
Yeah, man. I mean, hey, I'm sure you've had other intros, but for Ben, man, so for people who don't know who you are and what Authentic Education does, could you give us a bit more about yourself and the business, man?
Yeah, I think the best way to sum up Authentic Education is a company that simply helps people do what they love for a living. You know, that's really what it's all about. We just help people live their love. That's really what it is. And the core vision of our company is to live in a world where everyone is abundantly on purpose. And I know it sounds a bit cliched because everyone chucks around very cliched phrases, but for us, it's really true. You know, it's true for us. We really do just see a world where people can live on purpose and be abundant in the process, because there's a lot of people out there doing what they love that are broke. There's a lot of people out there that are very rich doing what they hate, and there's got to be a happy ground between the two of them. You know, you've got to be able to get that balance there. So we're on a very inspired mission to make sure that people out there can do what they love and get handsomely rewarded for it. And that's kind of what we do. And I got into it because I was struggling. I was in a job that I didn't like, and I had a lot of ups and downs in my life, and I just really wasn't on purpose. And I had a lot of depression and a lot of mental illness and stuff when I was growing up. And I just wanted to, when I got myself back on track, wanted to really work out a way to ensure that other people didn't have to go through the same suffering that I did.
Oh, amazing, man. And I know Ben's just highlighted a little part of his story, and I know there's a lot more to it, Ben. And so talk us through that journey, man, where, you're, for a lot of people, like even myself, like literally a week ago, I was in a corporate job, right? And now I'm quit and I'm doing this, right? And I want to know about your story. I mean, like, what, you're in that corporate job, you're in that space where you're here to make a difference in the world, right? I believe everyone's here to make a difference in the world. And talk us through your journey, man. Like, what went through your mind as you were like, why am I coming up to this job every day? And, how did you get yourself to building Authentic Education?
Yeah, well, I was back in 1997. I found myself in a bit of depression, and that depression lasted about 5 years. And coming to 2002, I was in like my 5th year of chronic depression. I've been unemployed for a very long time. I was hugely in debt, and I was incredibly overweight. And I was really just lost, totally lost, and heavily medicated as well. So I was taking all kinds of antidepressant medication and lithium and Valium and Zyprexas and olanzapines and all this kind of concoction of medication. But the more medication I took, nothing changed in my life. And so in 2002, unfortunately, there was a bit of a tragedy. A dear friend of mine ended up ending his life, committing suicide, and it shocked me a little bit. And it kind of, everyone's got that moment that snaps them and back into reality. And for me, it was that moment when I found out the news about this friend of mine. And that day I just made a decision to wean myself off my medication. And I got myself a corporate job, because that's what everyone says you're meant to do. When you get back on track, just get back in the workforce. Everyone's saying, get in the workforce, just get a job. Everything will be all right if you just get a job. Yeah. And after being unemployed for a good 4 or 5 years, maybe it sounded all right to me. So I went and got a job, and I got a job in recruitment, and sure enough, got given one of those little cubicles with my own computer, and I'd rock up every morning at 8 a.m. and I'd finish at 6:30 at night. And I guess I felt productive, and I felt like I was part of a solution of something. But after a couple of years of that, I realized I was not as depressed as before, but now I was just unfulfilled. So I'd gone from depression to unfulfillment, which is I think it's just as bad as depression, like it looks better on the surface because you're wearing a suit and you're going to work, and, you're hanging out and having staff functions, and you're making sales, and So on the surface, it looks great. You know, everyone thinks that your life's fantastic. But I remember sitting up in my office up in North Sydney on Miller Street there. I had a view of the harbour bridge and the harbour and everything, beautiful views from my office. And I'm just looking out the window and I'm like, you know, people would really die to have the job that I've got. I've got total autonomy. I manage an incredible team. I get paid, you know, really, really well. But I am so unfulfilled. It's not funny. And so in 2005, I actually went to an event where they had personal development stuff. I didn't have a clue that this world existed. I'd never been to a public event before in my life. I just didn't understand they existed at all.
And so what made you actually want to go to that event? I'm intrigued, man.
Yeah, it was totally weird. 2003, I walk into this random crystal bookstore in Canberra shopping centre. There's a shopping centre there called Canberra Centre. Mm-hmm. I'm in this crystal bookstore and this woman who's working there just walks up to me and says, "This is for you."
Whoa.
I've never met her before in my life, and she hands me this ticket, and I'm like, well, "Who? What?" She goes, "This is you were in my dream last night. This ticket's for you." I'm like, "What?" Weirdest thing is, if you want to get really weird, the night before I had a dream that Tony Robbins walked into my dream and said, "Ben, I need you to come to an event." I'm not kidding. The night before. And so I'm in this crystal bookstore and this woman hands me this ticket. And I'm thinking, this is freaking weird. Like, that's weird. That's like, it's too weird. So they handed me this ticket to a personal development. It wasn't a Tony Robbins event, but it was a personal development event. And I looked online at what this event was like. And I saw people jumping on their chairs and dancing and massaging and slapping high fives. And I'm thinking, this is not me at all. So I just didn't bother going. And so for 2 years, I just held onto this ticket and forgot about it.
Wow.
And then I was in Sydney and something inside me just said, you know, have another look at the ticket. So I had another look at the ticket and I said, well, forget it. I don't care about the video. I'll just go anyway. It can't be that bad. And sure enough, I walked in the room. There's 2,500 people dancing on chairs, slapping high fives, going crazy. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to move past that idea and just if there's something to learn here. And, you know, I got to say that 3 days, it changed my life. I mean, it really did. And there at that program, I made a decision to invest $18,975 in education. And I was $140,000 in debt at the time.
Holy shit.
Hugely in debt. I'd only been employed for a couple of years. So I'd only just been off unemployment for about 2 to 3 years or something. And I invested in education and I've never really looked back. But for me, investing just under $20,000 on education sounded really crazy at the time. My dad thought I was completely crazy because I was still hugely in debt. I'd been in debt since I was 16. I'd always been in debt. And so I invested in this education. I did something crazy. I applied it. You know, I put the education into action. And one of the things you find about life is that, you know, the secret to everything is to apply your education. And so I basically applied my education and just put it into action. And that's for me what changed everything. So as a result of that, as I changed that thing and I moved into the direction of what I wanted to do, by 2006, I'd launched my first coaching business and left my job. And 2006 onwards, I was off and running. And in 2009, Cham and I decided to put together a personal development company, Authentic Education, and the rest is history, as they say. So it was quite a journey. I think the turning point for me was just investing in education, and also having a tragedy with one of my friends really shocked me to the fact that people are miserable, and you know, I should be doing something about fixing that.
Yeah, and I love it. I love the story in the fact that, you know, it just didn't just happen all at once, right? It was all building up to it, and there was even resistance to it, especially with, you know, we won't call it crazy, right? That lady who just knew it was you that she had to give a ticket to, and you're just like, you know, everything happens at the right speed at the right time, and you know, I'm intrigued, Ben. Like that $20,000, right? I mean, what did that include, right? Because I know that, you know, for education, you know, we can always go out, buy books, go to courses, but I'm guessing some part of that included coaching, didn't it? Like personal coaching kind of thing.
Yeah, well, what I got for my $20,000, I got, I think it was 5 or 6 core training programs. And included in that was some coaching with a private coach. And so I attended all the programs pretty much in that year. So I tried to knock them all out in 2005, 2006. Mm-hmm. And I had some private coaching as well at the same time. And just the combination of those things got me started. And I was just learning everything I could. I went from that to go and studying Reiki and studying all these different spiritual practices and healing practices. And I started to study all these different concepts that I could. And as a result of that, I think I just got inspired. And I think the thing is, once you learn enough tools, you kind of want to share them. It's like, you know, if you practice something long enough, you're going to have to use it eventually. You know, you're like, it's that kind of philosophy. And I think after I'd studied so much, and I realized that there is a way of changing people's lives. There is a way of, you know, going out there and doing something different. I felt that the only logical thing to do now would be to share that with as many people as possible. And so by having a private coach, having some really good mentors around, and also just having the right education, I think is what really did it. But deep down, I don't know if people are born to do things. I'm not certain about that. I mean, I don't have any evidence of what happens before we get here or what happens after. I mean, I've got some ideas, but one of my friends says, don't worry about it. You know, you'll find out soon enough. So there's no point trying to be too worried about that. But I think all my life I've wanted to help people for sure. Mm-hmm. And my mum did something very unique. When I was about 6 years of age, she took me to her house every Tuesday morning, where myself and my mum would massage the body of this young boy who had severe cerebral palsy. And so as I was growing up, I had this strange connection with wanting to heal people, because every Tuesday morning we'd go there and we'd heal this person that couldn't really speak English, you know, couldn't communicate effectively. So I had to provide this form of healing and support to someone who could only share back to me emotion more than anything else. I think that did have an impact. Like, I think that shapes a bit of your life. When something like that you're doing at that age, I think that has an impact on what you dedicate your life to in the end. So I think that had an impact. I think, you know, I come from a pretty healing family. My mum's a nurse, my sister's a nurse. And so I think, I don't know, maybe there's a nurture and a nature thing thrown in there somewhere along the line. But I'm inspired by it, you know, it's enjoyable stuff.
Oh, beautiful, man. And thank you for sharing that story, because it's so important that sometimes we have to link things back into our childhood that actually drive us to do what it is that we do. And I'm intrigued here, Ben. There was something that came up for me that during our conversation that I thought I want to ask is, you know, so, you know, you put down that money, but when you put down that money, right? I mean, and you're $140,000 in debt, right? Did you ever doubt to yourself as well? And, you know, how did you overcome that, right? For people who are listening and who, you know, even who aren't in debt, but they know they need to do something, then they're afraid to put down that much money. What was going through your mind? What drove you to say, screw it, I'm just going to go do it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I made the decision very rapidly. I just said I'm going for it, because the speaker on stage ticked all the boxes that I you know wanted to hear, and a very proficient salesperson in promoting their products and services. But I kind of somewhere in the back of my mind, I guess I kind of added up all the money I'd spent on counseling, on psychiatry, on medication, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, really, you know, that health insurance companies have had to cover for all kinds of things. And I just thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I'll lose the money. So what? What's the best that can happen? Geez, I could learn all this new information. And I know that one of the questions you often ask the people on your shows is, you know, what's one of the best pieces of advice you ever got? Yeah. And I don't know if this is the best piece of advice, but it's very relevant. Someone once said to me that whatever got you here won't get you there. So whatever got you to where you are today, it can't get you any further. Because if it could, it would have. So whatever your finances are right now, well, that's your level of knowledge around finance. Your level of knowledge around finance can't get you any further. Whatever your health is right now, that's your level of knowledge around health, because you can't get any further. So anytime someone creates some better result in their life, it's generally due to, you know, only two things. They either learn something new, or they apply something that they already knew. That's the only two things that creates change in someone's life. They either learn something new or apply something that they already knew. And so I knew that I'd been applying everything that I know. So therefore, what I know was not enough. And I thought the only way I can get change in my life is by learning something new. And so for me, I did everything I could to learn something new. and specifically learn something around the power of the mind, around psychology, around mindset. And so when I saw the opportunity to invest just under 20 grand, I really didn't hesitate. I didn't even think about the money because I just thought about the upside. You know, I just thought, I'm going to apply this. I'm going to really do this, and I'm going to see what comes out of it. And I know a lot of other people invested that money, and a large majority of them never did anything. Never at all. You know, you catch up with them 10 years later, and all they got was a 20 grand debt. You know, they didn't get anything else out of it. So I think, you know, people call a certain category of people, they call them the 1%ers, and they're called the 1%ers because there's only 1% of the population that does the work, you know. So it's one thing bitching and moaning about the fact that you haven't got results. It's a whole nother thing putting in the effort that deserves the results. And, you know, I always bow my hat to people like yourself who put in the effort. You know, you do the work, of course you're going to get the rewards. So a lot of people think you get something for nothing in life. It's just not true. So I knew that if I learned something new and I applied it and I put in the work, put in the elbow grease, I dedicated myself to it, then I'll get the results from it. So it was, I guess, was there fear? No, for me it was more excitement. My dad was with me at the event. He was afraid. He was trying to talk me out of it. I mean, he was going off at me.
How did you go past that? You're just like, Dad, this is it. I just know it is. And is that what you were doing to your dad as well?
You know, actually, you know, well, back then I was a bit of a smart ass, and Dad said to me, Ben, he said, if you invest in this education, I'll never speak to you again. And I looked at him and I was like, double bonus, man. Like,
yeah, I remember that. Oh.
Get some education. So I almost, you know, I pretty much bought it in spite of him, but my dad and I have a great relationship, and years later he actually asked me if he could sign up for the same courses. Oh. And by the time he'd asked me, the courses were now 40 grand. They'd doubled in price since then. So we kind of missed that opportunity. But I think, I really think education is what sets people free. No two things about it. And that's why our company provides education. That's our core offering. You know, we know it changes lives. We are certain of that. So as long as people apply it, you know, that's the main thing.
Yeah, and you highlight such an important part, because when you're saying, you know, there's only two things: either you learn or you do it, right? And you apply it. And I was like, really? You think so, Ben? Because how many people, like, you know, you said it yourself, right? Like, these people pay $20,000, they get all this knowledge, and it's like, oh, I'm smart now, right? And then it's just like, yeah, okay, go do this stuff. But you're right. It's just, it links in. It loops back, right? It's that you learn, then you apply, and then you find out what's not working, then you learn more on how to do it better, and then go around in circles and back in. And it just reinforces itself. And, you know, so it's amazing that, you know, you share that, and it really rings true, man. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, a lot of people actually get what I call shelf development.
Yeah.
Shelf help, you know, shelf help's where they just buy all this education, they just stick it on their bookshelf, and that's it, you know. And people come around and look at their bookshelf and they go, wow, you know, look how smart your bookshelf is. But the thing is, people need self-development. They need self-help, you know. They need to apply it themselves. And this is a real distinction. You know, applied education changes the world. Education does not change the world. Applied education changes the world. That's what it does.
Oh, powerful, man. And then question I have here that sticks in my mind here, Ben, is when you made that decision, you invested into it. Did you know that you're going to start a business, right? Did you know you're going to like start your own business, and that it would be in education, that was your purpose? Or you just weren't sure and you just walked in there and just open to the possibilities to see what it is that you're meant to be doing?
I think I just always had a desire actually to be a healer. I think I wanted to be a healer. Like I think back then, I still do have a bit of an ego, I'd say. I think we all do. But back then, I really wanted to know that I could heal other people, you know, that I had the power to heal. And so I think there was this narcissistic element to my drive. You know, I think everyone has altruistic desires to go and help the world, but they also have narcissistic things where they want stuff for themselves. And I think, you know, I think I wanted to serve the world, but I also wanted to know that I was as smart or smarter than the psychiatrists and the psychologists that were all trying to help me, but didn't specifically help me. Like it was kind of like I'd found this battle that I wanted to go and prove something to the world. Yeah. And I don't think trying to prove things to the world is the best motivation, but it definitely gets you out of your day job and gets you started on your journey. And then I think once you get started, you can let go of that battle and just go out there and be of service. But to really get started, I had a bit of a battle. And I wanted to stick it to the mental health industry. I wanted to stick it to psychologists and psychiatrists. That was kind of a driving force for me. But now in hindsight, I realize that we're all part of a solution. Everyone's trying their best to do whatever they can. But I think that's kind of that's what got me started in it for sure.
Wow, amazing, man, amazing. And then one last question here before we start wrapping up the show here, Ben, is I'm intrigued, right? When you first started realizing I'm here to heal and I can coach people and I can help people, break through their mindset and really shift what they're thinking about themselves. How was that journey, right? When you first started, like first getting your first coaching client, first calling yourself a coach and doing that, right? I mean, I love to know, because, being a coach as well, I love to know how your journey was and what was going through your mind, man.
Yeah, I think I wish you were on my first coaching call because you would be embarrassed for me. Like it was shocking. Like, I've been coaching now for over a decade, so hopefully I would think I've gotten better since then. But man, I remember I was on my first coaching call. I was on a phone call with a lady called Bernadette, and I charged her $150 for the session, and because that's what they told me in the coaching session. At the coaching program, they're like, you've got to charge $150. Don't devalue the market. Yeah. Make sure you maintain our price points and blah, blah. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I tell you what devalues the coaching market is terrible coaches charging $150 an hour. That's what ruins the coaching market. And I was a terrible coach because, when you first started anything, you're going to be terrible. That's just the facts of life, Your first session should be and will be your worst session. And that is just the truth, right? So I got on this phone call with this lady, Bernadette, and she'd paid $150 for this session. And I had very limited coaching skills and I just was no good. First client ever. And I was just going like, how does that make you feel? And how do you feel about that? And how does that make you feel? And how do you feel about it? So that was it, man. That was
like one question.
I had like one question that I just said many different ways that all came back to how do you feel, basically. Yeah. And I remember the 40-second minute mark, 40-second or 40, I think it was the 40-second minute mark. We were on there for 60 minutes. At the 40-second minute mark, she just hangs the phone up, and I hear the sound of a truck reversing. It just goes beep, 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 beep. And I'm sitting there going, all right, well, maybe your battery's gone flat. So I try to call her back, and there's no answer. I'm thinking, man, maybe she's got no charger. So, I keep trying to call her back maybe 4 or 5 times. I send her text messages, I email her. Never hear from her again. Yeah. And it was just, that was my very first coaching session. First ever I got hung up on the 43rd minute, actually, the 43rd minute now, I remember. Yeah. And I just realized that I had a lot to learn and I should stop thinking about the money because everyone was talking to me about the money. I didn't get into this for money. I got into this to create change. I wanted to help people. And so I forgot about the money. And then my next client literally paid me a small little packet of Tim Tams and a half a carton of milk. She actually gave me milk and cookies for my next session. And so I started.
You were Santa Claus.
That's it. So I started to exchange, I exchanged value. But this lady, her name was Jess. Yeah. And she gave me milk and cookies, and that was a Reiki session that I did with her. Mm-hmm. And then she eventually started to pay me $20 a session, and I was fine with that. And then eventually I started charging $40 and then went up to $60, up to $70, $80, $90, and so on. Mm-hmm. And so what I worked out was it's important to get your skills correct. Too many people are focusing on the money. What matters more than anything else is be a master of your craft. Be a master of the craft of coaching. Mm. If you master that craft, then all things will work out for you. And then really, how do we get into education from there? It's a natural evolution. After you've done the same thing on 1,000 clients, you kind of think, I could probably leverage this. Maybe I could record it, or maybe I could do a session to 100 people at the same time. And so I think for people who start one-on-one, going one-to-many is a natural evolution. I think that just naturally occurs. Mm. And everybody should make that step at some point, because really, if you want to change the world, you've got to be able to leverage out what you do by serving more people at the same time. But certainly, the first coaching session, it was really anxious. I was really afraid of it. I was stressing out. I was reading all my manuals, trying to work out what I meant to say, rehearsing scripts, practicing this and that. Yeah. And all I ended up with was, how does that make you feel? So So there was a lot to learn there, but it's good. I'm glad that happened with the first session because it toughened me up, man. Like if the first session was all roses and all easy going, I don't think it would have really taught me to go back to the craft and get better at it. So it was a journey. It was interesting.
Oh,
Sure.
I love that you shared it, man. And it's so important, right? Because, we all hit roadblocks, and, to hear that, where you're at now compared to where you were before. And it's like, oh man, even Ben was like a sucky coach at the start, right? So like, it's okay if you're starting out in something new and you just, you have that huge like failure at the start. And, I love it that you kept going with it. And, the last question on that part, Ben, is like, what did keep you going? I mean, like for most people, they could have been like, oh my God, the person hung up with me. Maybe I'm not meant to be a coach. Maybe I'm not meant to be helping people, whatever. What kept you going? And what kept you saying, I should be doing this?
Yeah, I've thought about this question a lot over the years because a lot of people ask me the question. And I think if I really think about it, I'd love to say it's my upbringing and the traumas. I had some abuse that happened from a neighbor when I was very young, and that created a real thing inside my life. So I think, I like to help people through that kind of elements of their life. I think I've had some rough times as a teenager, and I think maybe that makes me inspired to want to change people's lives. The more I think about it, the more I have to say, I think it's just ignorant stubbornness.
Yeah.
I think that's honestly what it is. I think I'm just ignorant to the fact that quitting is an option, and I'm so stubborn that I have to get it right because I refuse to not get it right. Like if you ask me what is the single most important trait in entrepreneurship, I think it's stubbornness. I think it's the ability to be so stubborn and completely ignorant to the fact that failure is an option. So my brain doesn't understand failure. I mean, I know how to fail. I fail every day, all the time. Right? I'm a complete legend at failure, but I don't consider failure an option. So I'm happy to fail, but it's not the option that I take. So if I fail, I just keep going. I don't fail and stop. So failure is not the stopping option. Failure is just another thing that happens along the way. And so I think I'm just so stubborn to proving that I'm right. Like I want to know that I was right. So if I go down this path, I want to prove, not to other people, but just that I made the right decision. So the amount of times I've failed or nearly gone bankrupt or screwed up marketing or stuffed up this and that and all kinds of things, it's crazy. It's happened so many times. But there is an inbuilt stubbornness that says, I'm not going to quit until I can prove that I can work it out. I love a good mental challenge. Like I love brain teasers and magic tricks. And if someone shows me a magic trick, don't ever tell me how you do the trick, because I would rather spend the next 6 months of my life working it out in my head until I work it out. So I like to mentally battle with things. So I think that stubbornness of wanting to find the answer gives me all the motivation that I need. And, people think stubbornness is a bad trait. As long as you're willing to be stubborn and iterate, if you're willing to do iterations and refinements with your stubbornness, you'll succeed. But if you're stubborn and not willing to look at anything new, then you're in a whole world of hurt. So I'd say it's ignorant stubbornness is the thing.
Not expected, totally unexpected, but that's a beautiful part of it. And that's real. I love it, Ben, man. Thank you for being open and honest to share it, man.
It was a pleasure.
So Ben, we're going to start wrapping up the show. I've had so much fun chatting here with you. And so, we're going to go into our quick fire questions.
Quick fires. All right. Quick fires. I'm going to sit up for this.
Yeah, sit up for this. And so the first question is our signature question. Yeah, Ben. So it's what we call the time travel moment. I mean, if you could go back to any moment in your life, right, 10, 15, whatever years, and tell, little Ben back then, one piece of advice, when would you go back to and what would you say to him?
Whoa, that is some deep stuff, man. This was not expected, but this is where I'm going to go, man. I'm going to go back. I don't want to bring your viewers down on a downer, but I'm going to go back to the moment before I walked into the house where this abuse happened. And I am going to say to that little boy who's just turned 6, I'm going to say, it would have been wise if you listened to your mother. So I think because my mum always told me never go near that house ever. Just don't even look at the house. So I think because I actually knew you were going to ask a question like this, and I had some totally different plan, man. But I'd say go back to when I was like just turning 6, and I'd say listen to your mum. That's what I'd say.
Wow, powerful, man, powerful, awesome. And then Ben, next question I have is, you got a lot of books you've read, you got a lot of, heaps of learnings from all these books. But if there was one book, absolute must read for everyone watching, everyone listening, what do you think that book would be, man?
Richard, I don't know. I'm going to break the rules. And I'm going to do it really quickly. I think if you want to be spiritual, I'd say The Alchemist. If you want to heal, I'd say The Toltec Path to Recapitulation. If you want to manifest, I'd say Ask and It's Given by Jerry Nesta Hicks. If you want to do business, I'd say Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. And if you want to understand marketing, I'd say Biology by Martin Lindstrom.
Oh, it's too fast. I can't even stop. It cannot be contained.
The Alchemist, The Toltec Path to Recapitulation, Ask and It's Given, Personal MBA, and Biology. That's buy as in to buy something, ology, B-U-Y-ology.
Awesome. We'll add that into the show notes, mate. And next question, Ben, is in the modern world we're living in, Ben, there's men, right, like us in the world, but I feel like, and from what I've seen, we're not living up to what the world really needs us to be, right? What the world needs from men. And what do you think that thing is that men need to start doing more to fulfill what the world is craving for, what the world really needs from men? What would that be, man?
There is an age-old saying that sums it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simply this: manners maketh the man. So what I think is men need to learn how to have manners. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is how to offer respect and treat people correctly and be the appropriate role model that is required. And I think that somewhere along the way, a large majority of men have lost their manners and they just don't know what manners are. And so I remember I was watching a movie recently. I can't remember what it was called. It may
That's because, guys, Ben watches a movie every single day, every single week.
Pretty much. This movie should come to me. Anyway, and in the movie, there's this one scene where it's kind of this secret community of elite people that dress really nicely and they're top trained assassins. There's some film that's recently come out. Mm-hmm. It's got that English actor from Love Actually in it, and anyway. And in this one scene, he's just in a pub fight and he's taken out the 3 villains, and he just turns and he says, "Manners maketh the man." And I just remember that it just really reminded me that I think that's the key thing. I think the only way to change the world is to be a better role model for the children that are growing up, because 50 years from now, let's say 100 years from now, potentially you and I aren't going to be here. And who's going to be here are the people that, 2 or 3 years old at the moment. So if we are able to set the right role models for the people that are growing up, then the world changes, because children match and mirror everything on the planet. So all they do is model what's around them. That's it. And so if people keep going to jobs they don't love and showing people that that's the way to do it, go to a job you don't love to barely pay your bills so you can be miserable on the weekends, then everyone just grows up believing that's the fact. And then if you're miserable, you're angry, then you create violence and fighting and disease. There's all these things that stem from that. So I think what a man has to do, and so too does a woman, I think we've got to be better role models, have better manners, and we've got to raise our children correctly to be more respectful of all of the value systems in society, and really have an idea of being able to look at the human race as a single entity, Wayne Dyer, a dear friend and a mentor of mine, would always say, on a round planet, it's almost impossible to choose sides, So I think one day we need to awaken the world to that. And so I think it starts with manners maketh the man.
Powerful, man. And I love it because we haven't had that response yet. And so awesome, amazing. And just two questions left here, Ben, as we
Mhm.
wrap up the show is the first one is, for you, Ben, I mean, someone who helps people get on purpose, right? Like, what does it mean for someone to be truly following their purpose? What does that mean for yourself and for the people that you help?
You know what I think it means? I think people put a lot of emphasis onto this idea that they're born with something they're meant to do for the whole of their life.
Mm.
If you look at a child playing in a playground, they can teach you a lot about life. And here's the thing with children. They play with things until they're bored of them. And when they're bored of them, they just chuck them away and move on to something else, right? So somewhere since we were kids until we became adults, we got conditioned or trained to believe that we're meant to do something for the rest of our life. And that's just not true. So how do I know when someone's on their purpose? It's simple. They're doing something today that is inspiring. Not for any other reason, but today it's inspiring. And when they get up tomorrow, if it's no longer inspiring, they stop doing it. Because a lot of people do things because they think they're meant to do it forever. But I always say to people, just because you manifest something doesn't mean you've got to use it, So just because I set up a highly successful Reiki training company 10 years ago doesn't mean I have to keep teaching Reiki now. Not because I don't like Reiki anymore. It's just because it doesn't inspire me. I don't find that inspiring. Just because I set up a full professional consulting company for corporate enterprise doesn't mean I have to do it anymore. In fact, I don't do it anymore because it doesn't inspire me. Just because I set up a highly successful one-on-one coaching business, well, doesn't mean I have to do one-on-one coaching anymore because it doesn't inspire me. So I think to truly be on purpose is to give yourself the freedom, excuse me, is to give yourself the freedom to do things that are inspiring today, as in have fulfillment now, not sometime in the future, and then have the courage to admit that when it's no longer inspiring, you stop doing it. Because a lot of people want to be seen to be consistent with what they say. Yep. And that consistency means that they'll keep doing something that they're no longer in love with. And we see a lot in relationships. You see two people, they're definitely not in love with each other, but they will stay together because they have told the people publicly that they're going to stay together. And so you get two people that are totally miserable for the rest of their lives because they made some public commitment. Be willing to break your word, is what I would say. Be willing to break your word to yourself if something becomes boring. Because truly inspired people just follow what is inspiring today. That's what living on purpose is. That's it. And in some way, make sure, if what is inspiring to you helps other people, then be sure to share it, Absolutely. You don't have to do things that help other people, but I found that it's way more fulfilling when you do.
Amazing, man. I don't even want to ask that last question, Ben, because I want to finish it up.
That was poetic. What is
poetic.
What is it, man? Yeah.
No, I think that was awesome, right? Because I think that sums it up so well, right? Is that, you just...
What is the last question?
I'm just going to have to get you back on another episode, Ben, and then we can ask that question and go even deeper on other things. And so, Ben, man, for the people who are watching, people who are listening, if they want to learn more about yourself and authentic education, where's the best place for them to check you out?
Yeah, well, for the people who are listening in, actually, I just think I remembered the last question. For the people who are listening in, this is what I'd say. If you want to find out more, we've got online a kind of a hidden link that we provide to people that I'm just going to actually check it here for you.
Yeah.
And if you go to authenticeducation.com.au/start, and I'm just going to see what comes up when we've on this link, authenticeducation.com.au/start, they'll be able to download instantly $135 worth of our home study audio programs.
Wow.
And that includes our 7-step system for unplugging from the rat race and getting to do what you love. It includes a CD on how to actually present confidently in any environment. And it also includes our signature process around what's called shadow values. They can actually know what their hidden drivers are. So it's authenticeducation.com.au/start. And they can download that instantly, basically, and get $135 worth of our education for being part of your show.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ben. We'll add that to the show notes. And final thing here, Ben, it's been an amazing chat here, right? We've learned so much. And, is there anything else you wanted to add, right, that we haven't been able to share and to cover on this show today?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, the one thing that I always want to share with people, it's just 3 simple words. Like the whole thing of our company is just designed around 3 very simple words. And that is just live your love, So if there's anything that I would want to say to anybody or share as a final thing, it's live your love. There's no point waiting. Don't worry about people's opinions. Don't worry about what people think. life's way too short to care about other people and what they think of what you're doing. It's just people put their dreams on hold for some reason. So I think if there's anything a human being can do, it's find out what you love and just do it for a living. So live your love.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ben, right? Ben Harvey, thank you for jumping on the show. Absolute honor to meet you and have you here, man.
It's a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me. It was a real honor. And thanks for introducing me to your community. I really appreciate it.
Oh, welcome. And so, guys, this wraps up another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Today, with the man himself, Ben Harvey, right? Talking about real authenticity and just flowing in with, how to live your love. And so, guys, if you learned something on this episode, make sure you share it. Make sure you go on iTunes. Make sure you rate the show, because I know this. Ben doesn't want to keep this a secret, and I don't want to keep this a secret. It must get out there. And we not just Ben's message, all the other guests on the show, like Jeff Slater, like Travis Bell. We need to get their messages out there as well. So make sure you head on iTunes to rate the show. And of course, remember to go to richardfood.com for the show notes as well. And finally, remember to go out there, go live with love, guys, and go smash it. I'll see you again on the next one.